Paleontology is the study and understanding of the past life that once used to exist on Earth and are now extinct. It gives us an insight to what the life and environment on Earth was like long ago. It revealed us to animals that we never imagined would have existed. Creatures varying in sizes, shapes, and diets, from enormous creatures that ruled the skies to smaller creatures that hid in the shadows. But the more these creatures got popular, the more people started to imagine and portray them as bloodthirsty monsters, or some coming up with their own conclusion as to how these creatures looked like, or how they went extinct. Fortunately, these myths and ideas decreased in numbers as time went on. But even so, there are still many misconceptions about many of these creatures that people still believe today. And in this video, I'll be taking a look at some of these myths that a large number of people still believe today. So without any further ado, let's debunk them. Myth number 1. All species of birds and small theropods survived the KPG extinction with minimal damage. When talking about the KPG mass extinction that happened around 66 million years ago, most people state and agree that almost all birds and other small theropods survived the extinction, and that only a few ancient lines died out. But birds survived and then diversified rapidly to reach eventually the 11,000 living species. This was supposed to confirm their great adaptability, hence their modern success, while emphasizing the contrast between them and their dinosaur relatives. However, the story seems to be different now. Close study of the bird fossil records shows that only 5 species of birds crossed the Cretaceous boundary. In fact, almost all of the birds came very close to complete annihilation. So, what happened? Well, firstly, 4 main groups of birds reached the end of Cretaceous and were killed by the asteroid impact. These were the enantiornithines, a diverse group of 80 species of flying birds, whose diets included hard-shell prey caught in the water. The second group, the palanthropiforms, comprise only 2 or 3 species from Mongolia. The third group, ichthyornithines, were fish-eating, flying birds with powerful jaws. And then finally, the hesperonithiforms, which were large, flightless fish-hunting birds. All of these species died out, and the only remaining survivors were the ancient relatives of ducks and chickens. A study in 2018 done by Dan Field suggests something else but similar. Using a phylogenetic tree of modern species, they noted which forms are tree dwellers, such as robins, owls, and parrots, and which forms mainly live on the ground, such as ostriches, ducks, and chickens. Tracking back to the late Cretaceous, they found that the ancestors of all modern birds had been ground dwellers at the time of the asteroid hit. All the tree dwellers, along with the unfortunate ichthyornithines and hesperonithiforms, died out. They also showed evidence from the fossils of plants and pollen which showed that forests had been devastated for about 1,000 years by the asteroid strike. The blotting out of the sun would have halted photosynthesis and eventually killed plants, while acid rains and other consequences of the asteroid strike would have flattened forests. Birds and other animals that lived in these ecosystems would have been left homeless. Then, in Paleogene, they noted that the first birds to emerge were largely ground dwellers. Tree-dwelling birds took some time to re-emerge, and many different lines of birds independently adapted back to tree life. The survival of the birds in the extinction was indeed a very close call, contrary to popular belief. But what about other beliefs of people about birds that are not true? Let's take a look at them. Myth number 2. Terror birds went extinct because they couldn't compete with the wildcats that came from the Great American Exchange. The reason for the extinction of terror birds is usually portrayed and thought to be that they were outcompeted by other large mammalians like Smilden during the Great American Biotic Interchange. While this myth maybe isn't considered relevant or accurate by most people around, it's still portrayed as such by many forms of media. This theory suggests that during the Great American Interchange that happened around 3 million years ago between the 2 continents, many carnivores, dogs, bears, and cats from Northern America were able to cross into Southern America, which was where terror birds lived. This increased competition of terror birds for food and territory, which they couldn't keep up with, due to which they had to face extinction. This theory is absolutely wrong for many reasons. During the Great Biotic Interchange, many animals like ground sloth moved to North America. Among them was an undiscovered species of terror bird. This undiscovered species then evolved into titanis, the only terror bird from North America, and the most interesting one. It would take over the title of top predator after Amphiacaridus coloradensis went extinct, which was likely due to climate change. Titanis would take this opportunity and would grow far larger to maintain its title as the apex predator, growing up to 300 kilograms. After many years later, around early Pleistocene, the most popular competitor of Titanis would appear, which was none other than Smilodon. However, this was not a challenge for Titanis. It's important to note that Smilodon had just evolved at this point. The oldest species, Smilodon gracilis, was way smaller than the other iconic species, only weighing around 100 to 150 kilograms. It would have been more of a prey than a competitor for terror bird. There was another larger and more stronger mammalian, Xenosmelus, but it lived in a completely different habitat than terror bird. So in short, Titanis was able to beat all of its competitors, dominating the ecosystem for many years. But something would happen that would doom the last terror bird Titanis to extinction. You see, while Titanis was evolved enough to defeat its competitors, it wasn't evolved enough for climate change. At the end of the early Pleistocene, there was another, long-term shift to a cooler, drier climate. To make matters worse, Titanis also lost its habitat. Due to all these reasons, the last remaining terror bird, Titanis, ultimately went extinct. The rise of terror birds was greatly underestimated and is still interesting, but there was another theropod just as if not more interesting than the terror birds, and also way more confusing. Myth number 3. Spinosaurus was too heavy to walk. It's a chimera made up of other fossils. Everything about Spinosaurus is debated. One of it is how it walked. While most people state that it was a bipedal with only a small portion disagreeing. There was, however, an analysis made by paleontologist Hank Sharp last year which sparked a lot of attention, and most people quickly started agreeing with his analysis. But what was the analysis even about? Well, basically, he stated that the current models and reconstruction of Spinosaurus were wrong. You see, in bipedal animals, one femur has to support the weight of the animal, due to which the width of femur can predict the animal's mass. This was supported by paleontologist Campion's paper in 2014. In short, a large animal can't support its weight on a skinny femur. Also, a small animal can't afford to waste nutrients to build a femur thicker than it needs to be. The result is a really close relationship that has great prediction power for dinosaurs. If we apply this to Spinosaurus, the femoral equation yields a similar body mass to volumetric methods used for the current model. Then that's enough support for that model. Unfortunately, it didn't meet the requirement, with him gaining only 1,300 kilograms, far off from that weight of Paul's model, which was 7,400 kilograms. Basically, Spinosaurus couldn't stand on its two legs. This theory concludes that either Spinosaurus wasn't bipedal and the reconstructed models are wrong, or that this method doesn't work. And it seems that the latter is true in this case. This is due to the following reasons. Firstly, Hank Sharp states at the end that this theory follows the assumption that dinosaurs followed the same femur-to-mass relationship as modern birds. However, the Campioni paper states that this is problematic. They state that this equation doesn't work for non-avian dinosaur and only works on the avian ones. They finally state that this method is not enough to estimate body mass in non-avian dinosaurs, and suggest the use of another method instead. Also, not to mention that if we apply this to other theropods like Acrocanthosaurus, for example, they also couldn't walk. And as for the Spinosaurus models being a chimera, this argument was already debunked by paleontologist Nizar Ibrahim, who studied the fossils material and confirmed that it was from the same animal. Also, not to mention that there are other spinosaurids like Irritator and Ichthyovenator that also have short legs. So there really isn't much to say about this theory other than the fact that it's very unlikely to be true. But who knows what will happen to this animal? It is Spinosaurus we're talking about after all. Well, there isn't much of a moral here. I guess it just shows that how much of our knowledge has expanded over the years, and yet how much more there is to explore and learn about in the past, the present, and the future. And that's it for today's video. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. If you did, then you can subscribe and press the notification bell. Well then, see you in the next video.